Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And in Move Fast and Break Things news, we actually have to talk about Microsoft Copilot because, quite frankly, it's a data governance nightmare, but it's actually just doing what it's designed to do. Now, here's what's going on. I found this really interesting. This is an article from the Register, and here's what's up. Because Microsoft, if you didn't know, and I'm sure you do, positions its Copilot tool as a way to make users more creative and productive by capturing all the human labor latent in the data used to train AI models and obviously then resell it. But in what is true for basically the entire tech industry, this technology reached the market way ahead of both safety and security. And again, that's not a Microsoft issue, that is everybody's issue. So it was only 2 years ago, if you recall, that generative AI really just started taking the world by storm and started to integrate. And so there's a lot of work on the security and governance side, as well as safety, obviously, that needs to be done. And initiatives that have added generative AI to customer service apps have actually been generating returns for the companies that are doing that, which actually compounds the problem because you as a competitor see what your competitor is doing with this and then want to get on board, and therefore the problem expands. However, and interestingly enough, with regard to Copilot, security and oversight concerns are very commonplace. Now, that's according to Jack Berkowitz, who's the Chief Data Officer of Security, and that's drop the Y in security and add an I, and you've got their name, and I quote, particularly around bigger companies that have complex permissions around their SharePoint or Office 365 or things like that, where the co-pilots are basically aggressively summarizing information that maybe people technically have access to, but shouldn't have access to. And that essentially is the crux of this situation. And it's not just human resources type data that may get surfaced inappropriately through these permission issues through the interaction with the Copilot service. And I quote Berkowitz again. A few weeks ago, we hosted a little dinner in New York, and we just asked this question of 20 plus CDOs or chief data officers in New York City of the biggest companies. Hey, is this an issue? And the resounding response was, yeah, it's a real mess. And so when they further asked about how many had actually grounded Copilot implementations, about half of them, according to Berkowitz, actually said that they, in fact, had halted these or severely, essentially reduced this. They're turning off the software or restricting its use. And while AI software also has specific security concerns with these issues, basically this had more to do, though, with internal employee access to information that shouldn't be available to them. And this is exactly the crux of the issue. Microsoft Copilot is doing what it's designed to do: consume data, analyze data, come up with solutions, etc., etc. And by virtue of that, it is consuming data that on absolutely everything. But the permission structures essentially aren't really fully there, and there goes the governance side of things. And so, for example, let's say I only have access to 100 files out of 1,000 files for my company, but Copilot can essentially consume all of this data. It may be giving me information on those other 900 files that I'm not supposed to have, or maybe there is a miscommunication in permissions, and while I only use 100 files, I have access to all 1,000 when I shouldn't, and therefore Copilot, once again, is giving me information that I shouldn't have, and I didn't realize, oh my God, this is information from those other 900 files I didn't think I have access to, and now I have this. Now, it's similar outside of artificial intelligence to understand that we have permission issues as creep sets in. So companies that have all of these old Active Directory servers with file shares and permissions come and change, ebb and flow, they're mismanaged over time, creep sets in. And by virtue of that, now you start dumping personally identifiable information in PDFs, in files or folders where people have access to it. We see it all the time in assessments. So this isn't necessarily a Copilot issue, but what Copilot in this case is bringing to light, like Google did with their search feature years ago, is essentially this issue. We are not good at data governance, and by virtue of that, the co-pilots of the world unknowingly take advantage of it, and therefore the employees get access to stuff they shouldn't. And so this is a huge problem. And so when we are looking at this, we really have to understand that this underscores the problem that we have with not just data governance, but the management of the actual permission structures that falls under governance as well. And so while this is a more technical thing that I usually talk about, this is actually a critical one because it's getting companies in trouble. You're exposing you're exposing data to internal organization systems and users that could potentially be tantamount to a breach. And I think that's a huge thing. So I'll leave it at that, but if you're running Microsoft Copilot, understand that the data it's consuming on your behalf, it may be a lot more than what your users need or should actually have access to, and that's something that you should basically consider and figure into how you're going to apply Copilot across your organization. And when you see large organizations shutting it off or severely restricting its access, that's an indicator that this really right now hasn't been fully thought through on that end. And that's one part Microsoft, but a whole lot of parts everybody else. So with that, there you go. Best of luck with Microsoft Copilot, but understand Copilot is indicative of all the other generative AIs and learning AIs we're integrating into these systems. So don't just think of it as a Copilot problem. Think of it as an industry-wide problem. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private, especially in data governance. Take care.